because you can be successful at family devotions every day and lose your family. But if you're connecting on a regular basis and you're showing up in a real way and your family is sensing your presence, they will adopt your spiritual life because they've seen you and they know you. They may not adopt your habit of doing a devotional if there's not life in it.
All right, we have one of our favorites back on the podcast. We've got Mark Hancock. Mark is the CEO of Trail Life USA and also the author of Why Are We Sitting Here Until We Die? Great book, and we'll get into that. Mark, thanks for being back on the Men's Alliance podcast.
Thanks. It's always good to spend time with you.
Last time we did this, we weren't doing video yet on our podcast. It was an audio only. I think it was about like 2.5 years ago or something.
Gosh, yeah, I think that's the first time you and I met was on that. And
yeah,
it's been good to get to know you even outside of these opportunities. So
yeah, so for our listeners, Mark has been helping mentor Men's Alliance and myself, and I'm going back down there. Going to see you again in January is the plan.
Awesome.
God willing. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities between Trail Life and Men's Alliance, and you guys just have a few more chapters than we do. You guys like over 1,000, and we're over 100. But
nice.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of similarities. It's it's a male oriented Christian ministry that's outdoors. So there's a lot of common ground there. By the way, I want to talk today a lot about dads and how to be a better dad, but I just want to start off talking just a little bit about your book, because you gave it to me last time I was down there. I read it. I've talked a lot about it. I've led some devotions about it. What inspired you to write that book, Why Are We Sitting Here Until We Die?
Wow. Well, I started writing that 7 years before it got published, because I started writing it right before Trail Life.
Okay.
And I of course, Trail Life, when we started with nothing, and 7 of us in 5 different states with no money. And so it took up a lot of my time. So you can imagine that writing project got set aside. But a couple years into it, I had pitched it to a couple publishers who said, great idea, great writing. When you pitch it to a publisher, it's not necessarily done. You have to write 3 chapters and give them a table of contents. So they look and they say, okay, this is a good idea. You kind of know what you're doing here. I see where you're going. And that's enough to contract to begin. I had a couple folks who are interested. But Goose, what they said to me was, you got a great idea, great concept, but nobody knows who you are. You have no platform. And you can get away with that with writing fiction, but with nonfiction, people kind of want to know, does this guy have a right to write this book? And so 7 years into Trail Life, publishers reached back out to me and said, you got a right to write this now.
Oh, yeah.
So
now we know who you are.
Yeah, now we know. Yeah. So, I got back on it, and Eva Marie Everson, who's the co-author, she wasn't involved in the beginnings of it, but she helped me drag it across the finish line in the middle of Trail Life. And so she's an amazing writer, really helped me with it. Actually, she just cracked the whip to keep me writing, keep it done, to get it over the finish line. But I wrote it because, I was traveling around the world at the time, putting together evangelistic campaigns on 5 different continents, working with hundreds of denominations, volunteers, and staff people in all kinds of countries, and I kept running into people who had this exceptional quality about them, where they were so convicted about the vision that no matter what they saw God doing, they were all in. And then I also met people who were like, doing big things for God was like a distraction to them, because it's, we're kind of doing this. I'm kind of busy doing this over here. And yeah, there's things that are important that we should be doing, but it's like you really don't want to. You're satisfied just sitting there. And so I was in Ghana, Africa, and I went to a church service where we were planning on holding an event, and they had a guest speaker who I'd never heard of, and he got to the stage and he read this scripture. Why are we sitting here until we die? It comes from 2 Kings chapter 7. And that just struck me, that question, because I've been thinking about these people who are just sitting around until they die. And I probably read that scripture, but I can tell you I wasn't familiar with the story behind it. So I dug into that 2 Kings chapter 7. He's like, I want to know more about what was behind that question, because that's a fascinating question. Why are we sitting here until we die? And it's from the Bible. And so I dug into the story and I started seeing all kinds of parallels between what was going on there in 2 Kings and what I was encountering in men in particular in the church around the world. And I thought, I need to start writing about this. And I didn't know if I was going to speak about it or whatever, because I was organizing these events but I wasn't the main speaker. But every once in a while, these churches, as they would get to know me, they say, hey, you're in town organizing events. Will you preach Sunday morning, or can we do this, whatever? And so I thought, at least, I can preach about this. And I was preaching some at home too. I was on staff at a church at home, but I wasn't the main preacher. So I was preaching on occasion. So I thought it was going to be a series of sermons, and it just really developed into the book. And so the experience of Trail Life, where I got to walk some of the stuff out, it was really cool that the book got published later, because I got to integrate the experience of Trail Life into the stories and the flow of the book there too. So that's why I wrote it, for guys like you who say, who don't just lament over the state of men today, but say somebody's got to do something about this. And so when I ran into guys like you, who say somebody's got to do something about this, and guys who say somebody needs to do something about it, but it's not me. Mm-hmm. I want to inspire more of those men to say, maybe it's me.
Yeah. For me, I got kind of convicted over this similar notion of like how we wait for something to kind of happen and then we're going to act, right? Mm-hmm. Even those of us who are acting, who are doing stuff. So a donor wrote a check to Men's Alliance, and I instantly started thinking, oh, now we can do this and this. And then I was like, why was I waiting until I got the check to do that? Yeah. Why didn't I just do that anyway and trust that the check would arrive? So it's kind of helped turn my thinking around to whatever it is we know we should be doing, whatever it is we think about, don't wait for that person to come alongside you, or the money, or the weather, or your boss or whatever. Don't wait on it. Just start doing it, trusting that God's gonna pave the way right ahead of you.
Yeah. Can we stay there a minute? Because I feel like this would really speak to your man. I know we've got other stuff you want to get to, but I'm just really feel led to let's just stay there for a minute. Because the story in Scripture in 2 Kings is that these lepers are sitting outside the gate of Samaria, and the city is under siege, and out there is the enemy. And they're looking at each other like, if we go inside the city, we're just going to starve, because there's no food there. People are eating, donkey head and dove's dung, and they're boiling their children. So that's not a good place to be. It's not a good place to head out there, because there's this enemy out there who would kill us. But that said, why are we sitting here until we die? And so you're describing that kind of thing, where you're saying you've got this vision in your heart of something that you want to do, but you can't not do it because that's starving. You can't move ahead because you don't have the money for it. But then you ask yourself that question, well, why did I just sit there without doing anything? And so I love the inspiration of the lepers of all people.
Right.
They asked the question, why are we sitting? And they said, we're going to head out there. We're just going to head to the enemy's camp. And when they went to the enemies, at the moment that they rose, and this is the key thing, this is the thing that blew up for me in Scripture. That when I started looking at that story, and Scripture is not really clear on it, but if you dig into it, this says that they rose at twilight. You say, okay, why is that important that they stood up? They said, why are we sitting here and die? And they said, well, let's go out and give ourselves over to the enemy. At least, we're doing something. So it said they rose at twilight. And then you're reading this story, and you discover that at twilight, at the same time, God moved over that enemy camp with a sound of chariots, and it freaked that enemy camp out, and they fled. And so then the lepers come upon this camp with all of the riches and everything that was abandoned there, and they get the thing. And then they go back and they set the city free. They go back and they say, we can't just eat all this stuff and enjoy this. We need to tell the people that this is up. And so these lepers who stood at twilight, God moving at twilight over the camp, the lepers discovering all the goods in the camp and then bringing them back to the starving city. It's just a beautiful story. But that rising, and this is what I propose in the book, and this is what I'm saying to your guys who are listening today. Sometimes you got to stand up before you know the enemy has been delivered, has been vanquished.
Yeah.
And that's what I think you're asking yourself. Why did I have to wait to find out that the enemy was already gone before I get the treasure? And I just think that we miss that in a lot of cases, that sometimes if God has called us to something, he's equipping us to that. And so he may be saying, go ahead and stand up now, and then I will move. It's your standing. It's your response to that causes me to deliver the treasure to you.
That's right. I think
you kind of waited for the treasure before you stood up, but
yeah,
that's a great lesson. So you looked at that, and you said, I may do that different next time. So.
God's looking for men who are going to stand up and start moving. And I'm convinced that when he sees them, that's when he's like, all right, I'm gonna help this guy out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are just sitting around thinking they'll get up and move after they get the help, right? It doesn't go that way.
Yeah.
So
I remember asking a group of people, if you had unlimited resources, what would you do for God? And they just started talking about that. Oh, I would do this. I would do this. Well, guess what? If God's calling you to it, you've got unlimited resources.
That's right.
Call you to something that he's not providing for, but sometimes he's waiting for us to stand up and move, and at twilight he'll move on our behalf to deliver the treasure.
Man, that's so good. So definitely, guys, check out that book, Why Are We Sitting Here Until We Die? And we will link that right here for you. I want to shift over now, but this ties in because men, we want to be better husbands. We want to be better dads. I'm convinced every man wants to be, every sane man wants to be, but we don't necessarily know how, right? It's like, it's puzzling to us. The stuff we think will work, the stuff we think would make us a good dad, sometimes it doesn't. And it frustrates us. And a lot of men have tried and failed enough that they're just like throw their hands in the air and kind of just resign themselves to the sideline. So I want to talk today about how to be the dad that your son or daughter needs. And I know you've written extensively on this.
Yeah, and I'm writing a lot on that right now because we started a new initiative. I think since I've seen you last, we started an initiative called Fathers and Families. And basically, we've had over 100,000 men come through Trail Life USA, and we've learned something about men over the years. And because these guys who are involved in Trail Life, they're giving it their all. I mean, you need to give up a weekend and go sleep on the ground.
Yeah.
Do that a number of times during the year. Maybe your listeners do that all the time, but that's kind of a big deal. But the amount of energy and focus and calling and passion that it takes to do a good job as a Trail Life leader really says something about that man. So we've discovered what it is that inspires men and helps them to stand up and go out and do what it is they need to do. So we developed Fathers and Families as an initiative, and we're doing one-day meetings called Man Alive, and we'll bring men together for one day, and then we release them to go do so. It's not, I've been to enough men's events that I know that a one-day men's event can fire a man up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really ministries like yours that take a commitment over time. There's a couple of elements to it. One is it has to be over time. We may get fired up in a day, but then we go back to church and we tell the pastor, hey, we're ready to do something big for Jesus. And that pastor may not have anything for us to do.
Yeah.
Say, here's an orange vest. Help us park.
That's right. That's right.
That's not what I was thinking. You got something else. So what we want the men to do is leave that room, and we're bringing ministries together that can help men develop some kind of consistency outside the meeting. So the whole function of the Man Alive meeting is to say, this is just to bring you together to say, here's some areas you can go out and move. And so you need to have some kind of consistency. You have to have some sort of accountability. You also have to have understand your purpose in doing this thing. And also you need a brotherhood. You need a band of brothers outside this group of guys that you just spent this day with, because they're not going to be here tomorrow. So you have to develop those sorts of things. So the whole aim of Man Alive is to develop these ongoing connections that men create, very similar to what they find in your organization. We don't provide those things necessarily. We give the platform. We invite everybody together and say, okay, here's your options. Go find one of these and get involved.
Point them towards them.
Yeah. And I think that's where the magic is men over time developing a relationship with each other, understanding relational masculinity, understanding that relational skills are masculine skills, how to connect, how to talk with people, how to be present, how to be self-regulated, how to unburden yourself from the cares of the day so you can be fully with your wife and fully with your kids. To develop those kind of skills, those are the things that make us better dads. So I hear what you're saying, to say that, we don't really know what to do. We kind of get lost in this stuff as dads because we don't know what to do. I'm pushing back against that and saying, I think we know what to do. I think innately God has given us, I'm calling them superpowers. And we've identified 7 superpowers that men have already. So many men's conferences that I get to, that I've been to, I love the intent of it. Mm-hmm. But so many men walk away feeling shamed by it. So basically they're saying the same thing. You need to read your Bible more. You need to pray more. You need to have a home devotional. You need to date your wife. You need to, just all these, you're not doing enough. You're not doing enough. Let me tell you, because you know this, that men are shamed enough in our culture today. Mm-hmm. We're being shamed at every turn. And so we've created this not to shame men, but to remind them of who they are.
Yeah.
And so we talk about these superpowers being things you already have. They're already in you. We just want to remind you that you've got these things and draw them out. And so it's important to remind men of who they are, because God's created them to do this stuff. And just like we were talking about earlier, God doesn't call you to do something He doesn't equip you to. So He's called you to be the head of your family. So He's equipped you for that. Just don't forget that, and don't let the shame of the culture, the saying you're toxic, you don't fit, you're not good enough, fast enough, smart enough, good looking enough, whatever way I was at a men's meeting not too long ago, and the speaker, somebody all your guys would be familiar with, was a former football player. And I'm just looking at the guy like, man, he's amazing, but I could never be him. Mm. And I heard this subtle kind of shaming message I was giving myself. And a lot of times we would do that. We'll put somebody in front of people and say, you should be like him. And the message is, I just can't. I am not going to play in the NFL. I've determined that already. It took me a long time. Around my 50s, I said, I'm probably not going to play in the NFL. There used to be a guy, George Blanda, who was a kicker for the Raiders, the Oakland Raiders. And he was like 50 years old. He was the oldest guy in the NFL. And so as long as George Blanda was playing, I think that
he was giving hope to so many men.
Yeah, he was. So I thought, okay, I'm not as old as him yet. But when he got out of it, it's like, oh man, it's a young man's game. So when you put these guys in front of men, they're wonderful and they have great message. And this guy, I wouldn't put down for anything. He's an amazing man, a good husband, a good minister of the gospel, lives his convictions. but I couldn't be him. And so I was subtly shaming myself. And so we can do that to ourselves. We can sit in front of men who are doing a good job and think, gosh, I could never do that. Mm-hmm. And so what I want to do is remind men, you can do it your way. You're not, God's hand is not slack concerning his promises for you. And if he's called you to do something, he's equipped you to do that. So yeah, that's our main thing. We need to remind men of who it is that they are, that they have these inherent superpowers that they just need to reconnect with. And sometimes we just discover that in community with each other, and where a guy will say to another guy, and it's powerful when a guy says to another guy, hey, I noticed this about you. That's really cool. I really like that. It's like, oh,
that's very powerful.
Powerful, validating words. Mm-hmm. Where do we get those in our culture today? You don't get them. You have to have this band of brothers that speaks to you. But then they also say, hey, I know you're capable of doing better. And it's like, I am? Yeah, you are. It may sound like a challenging statement, but for us to be able to say that to each other, we need that kind of opportunity to speak into each other's lives. And you create that on an ongoing basis where you're providing an accountable atmosphere, where there's purpose for coming together. Like in Trail Life, guys are together with a purpose, but it's not solely about them. It's about the next generation.
Right.
But through encountering that purpose and walking out that purpose, they're being built up because they're seeing their value, they're understanding they can make a difference, they're discovering new skills or abilities that they didn't know that they have. So their self-esteem is rising because they're being reminded of who it is that they are. So those are some of the critical things. I know I've gone way beyond your question.
Oh, that's fantastic. You really got me thinking here about this analogy of kind of taking more time to focus on yourself as the dad or as the husband is, an analogy I've used before is sharpening your axe. And you're talking about you already have these 7 superpowers. I think that's key to understand. I'd love to go more into those with you, but the thing that so many men, I don't think they understand is that what you've got to do is not swing the axe a lot more, a lot harder, a lot faster at a lot more trees. And I think that's kind of what a lot of voices in culture are telling men. Here's what you've got to do to be a better husband. Here's what you've got to do to be a better father. And it's like this overwhelming checklist of stuff being put on your plate.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing and what I believe is I think we need to stop and we need to spend some time sharpening our axe and pouring into ourselves in ways that sharpen our axe, rejuvenate us, re-energize us, refill us, so that when we engage on the home front, it's much more impactful. And that's how we realize. And, thinking about our 2 different ministries here, I think that, I haven't led a Trail Life chapter, but like you said, it's a lot of work. You're sleeping on the ground a lot. You're making meals. You're taking these kids camping and hiking, and that's work. That's effort, right? And the men that do that, they need to make sure that they're also taking time to be with their band of brothers, right? Where they're getting their axe sharpened, and that's going to make them better at the other thing. And one more thing, I think a lot of dads, especially dads of really young kids, they think they need to be there all the time. They need to be there 24/7, right? And I think that there's this, it's almost kind of paradoxical that sometimes the way you become a better father is you got to take some time, not every night, but you got to take some time away from your kids to go sharpen your axe. To have that band of brothers requires you to, if you think about it for 1 second, if you're going to have a band of brothers, Christian men to help you be a better husband and father, you got to spend time with them.
Yeah.
And if you're spending time with them, you're not at home. So it's like you got to take time out and go sharpen your axe. That's going to make you better when you're at home. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's really good. So it's this quality quantity kind of thing, and you can't go to one extreme and say, I don't need a lot of time with my family or whatever.
But sharpen my axe just 24/7.
Right, but both of those things are valuable and important. But the way that we show up is so important. In fact, you're kind of leading me to the first superpower that we talk about is that he shows up. And whenever you always have that superhero who comes in and he shows up. You know? And as dads in particular, and as husbands, when we show up, we need to be there, fully alert. You don't see Superman kind of wandering through the scene. Oh, something's on fire. I mean, he's totally present and aware. And from a practical basis, that means we do simple things like put our phone away.
Yeah, I was going to say, Superman never shows up on the scene and is looking at his phone.
Yeah. And the phone's not our enemy, but it can be the enemy of good connected, solid relational masculinity, and that's what we're after is relational masculinity. Then you got to put your phone away, and then eye contact, focused attention, physical touch. Those are huge, particularly between fathers and sons. You can't, and again, that speaks to the phone too. Yeah, if you're not having eye contact with your kids and your wife, because you're distracted by your phone, you're missing so much, and you're not really present. You're not really there. I remember being with I was in Tennessee at a homeschool convention, and a dad and his son were coming up to me, and I was speaking at a homeschool convention, but they were in trail life. They had the trail life hats on, and they saw me, and they thought, oh, we get to go meet Mark. And so I saw the dad and the son, about a 5-year-old son, come up to me, and he's got the son by his hand. And so as they get about 10, 15 feet from me, I drop to one knee, because that's what I do with boys. Eye contact is so important for them, especially those little 5, 6-year-old guys. They're not used to somebody way up there coming down and entering their world at their eye level. And it's a beautiful thing. I would encourage you, man, if you got young boys, when you get home from work, you come in through the door and you drop to one knee, and look at the look on your son's face when you meet him there, because you're not coming in the door thinking about all this other stuff and your phone and what you got to do and put this down and I'll get to you in a minute. I mean, you just take that 30 seconds to say, I'm going to immediately connect with you on your level. It's huge. So I dropped to one knee with this 5-year-old boy. And of course, he's so shocked by this person almost from another world. Because when you're 5 years old, the whole world is up above you.
Oh, yeah.
And so I came down and met him. It's almost like Jesus coming to earth for him. And so his reaction was, of course, he goes behind his dad's leg and hugs on. It's like, what do I do with this? And so I stood up and I re-engaged the father, because I'm waiting for the son. And so a few minutes later, as I'm talking to that, all of a sudden I hear this little voice say, I have a dog. So I dropped down to one knee and engaged the boy. It just took him a minute to adjust to me being in his world. But that just lets you know the power of that eye contact, that communicate that on his level, that communicated that little boy, this man is interested in me. I just don't know what to talk to him about. And it took him a little while to say, I'm going to talk to him about my dog. So that's just a beautiful picture of how important it is for that eye contact. Eye contact, focused attention, which means we're not doing something else. We're not thinking about something. We're totally engaged in the story. And physical touch. A lot of times I'll put my hands on the shoulder of a boy as I'm talking with him. And we have a handshake in Trail Life USA. That's a handshake kind of like this. It's good, strong connection. So we'll give him a trailman handshake so he feels that we're there with him. Those things are critical. So if you can develop, particularly your son's eye contact, focused attention, physical touch with your son, that's key to that quality kind of connection you're talking about. That son knows that you are there, that you're not thinking about something else, you're not doing something else. And you need to sharpen your axe to be in position to do that, because before you walk in the door, you got to take a minute to do your part, which may just mean you take some deep breaths. Okay, let me refocus. Who am I? Our bodies are designed to calm when we focus on our breathing. They're just designed to do that. That's why so many meditations, those type of things, focus on breathing exercises. That's not some kind of ethereal mystic sort of thing. That's just how our bodies are designed. When you're saying to your body, I've got oxygen, I'm okay, you can really calm yourself and it helps you to be present. Maybe a playlist or something that you listen to on the way home from work. But when you're in your truck going home or your car going home, that's what you're doing is reorienting yourself to be present for your family.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
good.
through a playlist or through breathing, calm yourself. So when you open that door, you're not carrying everything in there. That's a dad who shows up. That's a superpower. We have that in us to be able to show up and be fully present. We had a trailer for our Operation Christmas Child shoebox packing party. Our staff packs shoe boxes every year. Our troops all over the country do it. But we do it as a staff. We have lunch and we pack our shoe boxes, and the families bring their kids. And little 5-year-old was sitting next to me. I turned around from the lunch table where I picked up all your food for lunch. I turn around and here's these tables and there's all these adults where there's a kids table. I'm like, I'm going to the kids table, So I sat down at the kid table next to this little 5 to 6-year-old boy. And so what I asked was, all right, who's got a joke? And so the kids, a lot of them were 10, 12 years old, and they had knock jokes and little jokes and dad jokes, which I love. But this little 5-year-old, because he didn't have a joke. But he raised his hand and said, I have a joke. I said, tell us your joke. And he's just looking around the room. We're meeting in our gymnasium here. He says, okay, well, there was a basketball and it went to the table. And he's just making this up as he's going. But I made sure that I was fully engaged with him, entering his world. And when he was through, he said, that's my joke. And we laughed together. Just being present for him in that. Eye contact, focused attention, didn't do physical touch, but eye contact, focused attention. He knew that he had me. And that's so valuable for boys in particular. Because like I said, the whole world is up there. But it's valuable for our wives. It's valuable for our daughters. It's valuable for us men with each other. I'm very capable of working a room. That's if you're familiar with Enneagrams, I'm a 3. 3s go in, then we can be a mile wide and an inch deep. And we can have something to say to everybody in the room. And my wife has to say, she doesn't have to say so as much now as she used to. He says, he was talking to you, but you were looking at the 14 other people you're about to go to next. I said, yeah, it really was. She says, can't you just be present with the person you're talking to? And it's an effort on my part.
Yeah.
To do that, to stay fully engaged with where it is that I am. I can be in staff meetings in a virtual sense, and I've got a number of screens, and I can be like answering emails while I should be in the staffing. That's horrible. They're aware that I'm not fully present, that I'm not really paying attention, and that's not good for people. So we need to practice these skills to make sure that we're fully present. We have the ability to do that. It's not something to be ashamed about. I'm not ashamed of the fact that I'm a 3. 3s are amazing people. 3s get a lot done. 3s get it done. When 3s read my book, they're like, hey, I could have written that book. And I'm like, yeah, you probably could have written it better. Because 3s get that whole thing of get out and do it, get it done. Some people read the book and it's like, I'm not really called to that. I get that. You're not a 3. So I understand that. I'm not ashamed about it. God created me as a 3, but I need to develop some of these other skills. And I need to intentionally work on eye contact and being present in that moment. When I leave the office, I have some routines that I do to get myself ready. Because when I walk in the door, my wife's ready to tell me about her day. Mm-hmm. And the last thing I want to do is be doing 14 other things or having my eyes go all over the room or whatever. I want to walk in that door and be fully present. Say, honey, tell me about your day. And just be willing just to eye contact, be able to sit there. Nothing else in the world is more important than what it is that's going on at the moment. I was late for this interview today because my wife and I were having some conversations about some big stuff going on in our life right now. And I told her, I said, I've got to leave in about 10 or 15 minutes. We got to 10 or 15 minutes. She says, honey, I'm like 2 things in a list of 55 things. And we've got that meeting today. We need to do it. I said, well, let me text the office. Goose will be fine. We'll get started. And I was able to sit there. In the past, I would have said, I'm out of here, honey. I told you I had an appointment. But it's so important to her that I set that aside. So I'm engaged. I'm here. I'm fully present. I'm not answering email. I'm not doing anything else. Give me a second to text the office to let them know, tell Goose I'm going to be late, but otherwise, I'm here with you. And we finished going through that list. That speaks volumes to my wife, that I put her in that position. So I'm fully present with you. I'm listening to you. You have my complete attention. So when you talk about quality time, you say, hey, I got home early yesterday. I spent 12 hours at home. How much time were you really fully engaged?
Hmm.
Not saying this to shame you, but saying, man, this is something you're capable of doing.
Yeah.
You're equipped for this. And so just a simple thing, to be present, to convey the good, to provide reality, to be aware of any call to action that you have, to be totally in that space with the people that you're with is huge. I
Yeah.
talked too much just now. I'm so
No,
sorry.
that's so good. And you definitely chose correctly, wife over anything else. And, I think a lot of men think that they're checking the box as a dad when they come home and they sit on the couch. They're in the room with their kids, but they're scrolling, or maybe they're still answering work emails. I know that.
Everybody's scrolling.
Yeah, the whole family.
It's so sad. Let's all get together. This happened last time our whole family got together. Now my two sons are married, so it was six of us: my wife and I, my two sons and their wives, and we just love being together. And but somebody had discovered a new game on the phone. I can't think of the name. It was like it's a watermelon game. I don't know what it is. I want a watermelon, something like that. And somebody said, "Hey, this is a fun game," and everybody just said, "Oh, I'll try it." Well, within 15 minutes, we're all just sitting there playing this game. There's no conversation going on. It's like, oh my gosh, what have we just done? And we
That's
had
funny.
to put the phones down. It's so easy to be.
Oh yeah,
you're together, but you're not.
It's like the default. Like we slide right back into it, and then you've got to conscientiously get away from it, and then you slide back. I know that you're describing a lot of the characteristics that make a man sharp at work. All that multitasking, all that get it done mentality, they're harmful at home. And when I was in the Air Force, it was very helpful to take off my uniform when I came home. As soon as I'd walk in the door, go to the bedroom, hang up the flight suit, put on, sweats and a t-shirt, and that helped me mentally shift. And once or twice, through the years, I'd come in and maybe like everyone's already sitting down at the dinner table and everybody's eating, and I would just like walk straight to the table and just have a seat. And it wasn't good. I didn't do well sitting at the dinner table trying to be dad in my uniform. And because I think we do need those physical, like you're talking about, as you're driving home from work, you're mentally transitioning away from work mode into dad mode. And it's good to have some physical reminders, something you take off, something you put on. You're like, I'm going to be here physically present, listening to my kids, talking with my wife.
Yep.
I love the phrase, and I actually heard this, from an instructor in the military, listen with your eyes.
Oh, I love that.
You listen with your eyes. And man, my wife and I, we were like, that's so good. We're teaching that to our kids. That's how people feel valued.
Yeah. No, I'm taking notes for myself. Good stuff.
So I want to ask you this: what's a common misconception or a common myth about what it takes to be a good dad? What's a myth floating around out there that you think should be dispelled? Hey guys, I've got two huge announcements for you. So I'm about to give you some dates. You're going to want to forward this podcast directly to your wife and tell her to mark your calendar. All right. The first one is coming up January 10th. It's the Men's Alliance 8-year birthday dinner and fundraiser. Going to be here at Journey Church in Richmond, Virginia. Go to our website. There's a banner at the top for you to buy tickets. It's a great date night. Bring your wife. It's going to be an amazing dinner. Get the tickets now. We're going to be announcing our Tribesman of the Year and Tribe Leader of the Year. It's a lot of fun. It's an awesome event. Also, if you don't live in the area and you can't make it to the birthday dinner, no problem. Set up a watch party, get some food, get your tribe, join us live streamed. We want to connect with all of our tribes virtually for our 8-year birthday dinner. All right, second big announcement, and this one's super big. We are having our first ever Men's Alliance National Rally, May 2nd through 4th, Pocahontas State Park here in Richmond, Virginia. We have incredible guest speakers coming. We've got Greg Kokel, Stephen Mansfield. You don't want to miss it. You can camp out or you can get a hotel in the area. We are encouraging everyone to camp, road trip here, grill out. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have a booth giving Men's Alliance tattoos. We are going to have cigars. We are going to have sledgehammer throwing. We're going to have the Barbarian Games, and we're going to have a national all tribes. Guys, this is an unconference. This is going to be unlike anything you've ever gone to because nothing like this has existed. We are putting on a Men's Alliance style weekend for Christian men. The workouts, the speakers, the fires, the food, it's going to be incredible. Don't miss it. Go get your tickets. men'salliancetribe.com.
I can think of so many things, but they're all good.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I think that we don't have the emphasis on the right ones. So it's hard to say you shouldn't spend more time with your wife, or you shouldn't have a home devotion, or you shouldn't do this or that, because those are all good things. There's nothing wrong with good things. So I don't want to diss anything because they're all good. I think that we just overemphasize certain things and think that that's the thing. And so I would say that the critical things are probably different than we think they are, although the things that we think are all good. So showing up, like I just talked about, is a number one thing. And I think that trumps, strike me dead. I think that trumps a good family. That trumps trying to attempt to do a family devotion every day. Because you can be successful at family devotions every day and lose your family. But if you're connecting on a regular basis and you're showing up in a real way and your family is sensing your presence, they will adopt your spiritual life because they've seen you and they know you. They may not adopt your habit of doing a devotional if there's not life in it. Mm-hmm. But there's life in showing up with for someone. When I look at myself, we never did family devotions, but I'm just not that disciplined, unfortunately. But I can tell you, both my sons and their wives they're better men than I am. Mm-hmm. And they didn't get that because we did family devotions, because we didn't. But I'm not dissing family devotions.
Right.
I wish that, but both my men they're better theologians. They know more about scripture. They're more mature spiritually than other young men their age. And I think that they did that because my wife and I were just who we are. Mm-hmm. And because that's so much a part of who we are, they adopted it that way, not because we sat them down. One of my very good friends, he went the route of family devotions and strict things, and all of his kids are struggling. And most of them have left the faith. And I'm not saying that I don't know how we got so blessed or so lucky, but I'm thinking that part of it had to do with my sons know where they stand with me. They know me. They know my heart. They know my weaknesses. And they know my faith is real to me. And it didn't take a daily devotional to show them that.
I think that's good for men to hear, because
don't do a daily devotional. If you're doing it, good on you, man. I wish I had.
We can give ourselves grace, right? And what I'm hearing is a lot of men get it right in their head, but not their heart. And so if you're doing it from some sort of legalistic, everybody sit down and be quiet, I'm going to read this devotion. Man, there's no heart in it. There's no relationship. It's just checking a box like an academic math class. That's a fail, right? Versus I lead a family devotion, but it's not regularly. Our schedule at our kids' ages, it's all over the place. I got 3 teenagers at home, 2 are driving, and so we just do it when we can. Yeah. And it's just, hey, here's something I read today. Here's something I want to share with you guys. And it's usually at the dinner table.
Yeah.
And I try to just get them talking with a question so that they're not doing all the listening and I'm not doing all the talking. And I certainly hope that I'm getting their hearts and creating that relationship, because, man, I hear you. Growing up in North Carolina in Southern Baptist churches, I saw a lot of dads, a lot of men who they were very strict, very legalistic, and they ensured that they won every battle, right? Their kid's not going to do this, their kid's not going to do that, their kid's not going to do this, and their kid's going to be in church. They won every battle, but they totally lost the war for their kid's heart. And I'm glad to hear you bringing this up, because it's something we definitely needed to address, because we do stress in Men's Alliance. We do stress leading your families in a devotion a lot. So it's important that we do highlight that you're doing it from the position of a relationship. You're doing it from the heart, not just simply checking the box.
Yeah. I'm sitting here regretting using it as an example, because I'm not dissing that at all.
No, I understand totally.
A number of things that I could have pulled out of there. Yeah, we talk about these things, and they're all important, and they're all good. But if the purpose of the family devotion is to make sure your kids understand that the Word of God is core to who it is that you are, there's other ways to do that. And the devotion in itself isn't necessarily going to accomplish that.
Yeah.
So it really does come down to showing up in your true self, and it's hard for us to do, because we have so many layers to who it is that we are, and so many defenses to who it is that we think everybody wants us to be. That showing up in your true self, your vulnerable self, it takes practice. And that's why, we enforce things like a brotherhood, or a band of brothers, folks who can call you out on stuff. And folks who you can deal honest with. I'm really struggling with this. Or like you said, if you can deal with your kids and let your kids know, I'm really struggling with this. When your kids discover that you have issues too, they can either discover it because by mistake, and they realize, boy, Dad's got this issue, but he doesn't tell us about it.
Right.
What are you teaching them? Don't be honest. I want my boys to know that if they're struggling with something, I don't want them to be afraid to come to me. My wife ran a crisis pregnancy center, and so she would deal with these girls who had unwanted pregnancies. And the most difficult cases were the ones who had strong Christian families.
Really?
Because they would walk in, they would say, I don't know how to tell my parents.
Oh, man.
I don't know how to. My mom would die. My dad is an elder, a pastor, a deacon, whatever. My family, I don't know how to do this. And so she brought that in a family and said, honey, we need to make sure that our boys know they can come to us with anything. There'll be the reaction that says, you did what? I mean, There will be that. And she saw over and over again these girls who thought that their families would disown them have the reaction, what happened? How did this happen? But then also come around and being incredibly loving grandparents for that unwanted baby, and really help that baby to feel wanted and to know that it's wanted. So we learned that from that we never wanted to set an environment for our sons where they would feel like we would be ashamed of them or whatever. And so you do that by modeling that, hey, I blew this.
Yeah, you gotta be you. That's right. You have to be talking
Yeah.
about your failures, your mistakes, in order to
Yeah.
create that climate.
Yeah. And the world doesn't end. So you have your reaction to whatever it is. They're coming and they say, hey, listen, I did this and such. I'm struggling with this. Wow. I thought I taught you better than that. That's our first reaction. So, but then they need to know that we're there for them, and we're the first people they should be coming to when they've messed up.
Man, that's so good. I took a big chance. I think it was probably about 3 weeks ago on a Sunday morning, and driving to church with my wife, and two daughters were in the back seat, and I'm driving to church and I am struggling. It is a bad morning for me, and I'm just not in a good place. I'm kind of struggling with some depression. I'm grumpy. I'm just not happy, and I decided just to say it out loud. So I told the girls as we were driving there, I said, you know what? I'm in a really bad mood this morning, and it's nobody's fault. I'm just really down.
Good for you.
And honestly, I don't want to be going to church right now, but I know I need to spend time with God. And so I know this is the place that I need to be. And I'm pretty sure that I'm going to walk out of here in an hour feeling much better. And I mean, nobody said anything. I don't think they knew what on earth to do with that. But I felt like, by the way, side story, I felt like I needed to prepare them for the fact that to me, the hardest part about going to church is walking to the door with all of the happy, smiling extroverts, high-fiving me, and I'm barely crawling in the door.
Yeah.
And so I needed to prep my kids for, I'm not, if I can sneak past the greeters, I'll have made it. Everything else will be good.
Because then you can be in your own space, the whole Lone Ranger thing. No one's going to bother me here. Can we transition to the second superpower? Because
please.
That's what you're talking. Second superpower talks about how a man has X-ray vision into the world of emotions. We have that. You have that. You are aware. You knew the way that you were feeling. Now it was new to you to express that and to share it with somebody else, because we don't do that. There's some in my family, emotions were weaknesses. You didn't share that, and it was monumental for me to begin to even understand what emotions are.
Yeah,
that I have them. And now, Dave, and I want to add you to this. I want to add you to this list. I have a habit of, and I am pretty good about this, pretty disciplined about this, where I check in emotionally with a number of guys every day. And I use the Marco Polo app to do that, because so much is lost in text. And I want to call somebody because they're busy or whatever, but you can do a Marco Polo if you've ever used that app. But you can send a quick video and just a quick check-in. He can watch it when he has time, and then he can respond by quick video. And I do this with a number of guys. One of the guys is a guy I did a podcast with who's in Wales in the United Kingdom. And so I check in. So we really connected through the podcast. And so I check in with him, and we check in with each other. He's younger. He's more like your age, has young family. So every day I check in. And part of that check-in is you're saying where you are emotionally. And it forces me, because I'm a person who grew up in a household where emotions were weaknesses, forces me to say, how am I feeling right now? How am I checking in right now? And so there's a couple steps. This one is you start with a moment of appreciation, which is what is it you're grateful for? And that kind of puts you in the zone of thinking about things. So what am I thankful for today? And I'll share that with whoever it is that I'm checking in with. And then I go to my emotional check-in. I'm feeling a little bit stressed today, feeling kind of anxious about this, I'm excited about this, whatever it is. I am intentionally checking in with myself emotionally. And then I'm saying that out loud, kind of like what you did with your family on the way to church. And to adopt that as a habit of regularly checking in with yourself, how am I feeling, and then expressing it to another human being is incredibly freeing. Especially for men who are taught to hide their emotions. And one of the things that I am always apologizing to with my sons is how uncomfortable I was with emotions until relatively recently. And I did that to them. I'm thinking about my younger son, Logan, when he was about 5 or 6. I got him a BB gun and took him out of the front porch and said, we live out in the country. So why don't you shoot at one of those trees, with a poplar tree, have big leaves. I want you to pick out a leaf on that tree and shoot it, and shoot at. And so he puts that little BB gun up to his little pudgy little face and he pulls the trigger. And Goose, a bird fell out of the tree. Now, he didn't know the bird he's not that good of a shot. But my reaction then, because I love my son, was I don't want him to experience this. He just killed that little bird. And so I take him by the shoulders and turn him back. Oh, okay. And take him right back inside the house. Because I didn't want him to have that emotional experience. And we do that as parents. We don't want our kids to have to get their feelings. We don't. We love them. And I so regret that.
What would you do if you were in that moment right now, if you had a do-over?
I've apologized to him. Every time I apologize to him, Dad, I know, okay. I was like 15 years ago. Can we move on to something else? Here's what I would have done. And this is, oh my gosh. I get emotional about it because it was never done for me. And it would have made such a difference for my son. I really wish that I had taken him and that we had walked out there into the yard and we had sat down and looked at that little bird and talked about how sad it was that bird was now dead. And that it was because he didn't mean to. A lot of times we need to apologize for things, even if they're unintentional. Mm-hmm. I did that. And let him understand, I did that. Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to. We'd have all kinds of defenses, all kinds of pseudo apologies. But geez, I did that. And I'm sorry that I did that. I didn't mean to, but I'm sorry that I did that. And then to say to him, what is that? You're sad about that, aren't you? And let him at 5 or 6 years old say, oh, that's sad. That's what I'm feeling. That's sad. Help him make that connection between what he's feeling in his body. A feeling is it's one of the 5 senses, is touch, is feeling. Feeling is a physical thing. And in the thoughts that we connect with it are what convert to an emotion. So he's feeling, for me, sadness. I feel here. Mm-hmm. I know what I'm saying. Now I know, because I know what I can make the physical connection. So sometimes in my check-in, the first thing I'm doing is say, what am I feeling in my body? Gosh, I'm feeling some pressure kind of here. I'm sad. That's sadness. What am I sad about? And then I can make the intellectual connection. But to sit down with them and say, that's sadness that you're feeling right there. And have him have that aha moment that says, oh, that's sad. Because particularly for guys, we have trouble connecting our emotions. Understanding. Right. You ask a guy, how are you feeling? Good. Well, there's thousands of emotions. Can you pick one of them?
There's good or there's angry. Those are your two choices. Yeah. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel good. Anything else is off limits.
It's okay to be angry because we're toxic.
Yeah.
So like in culture, it's okay for us to be angry. But to help them say, that's sadness. That's sadness. That's what you're feeling, is sadness. And have them make that connection. And then you ask what I would have done. I think I would have said, this is kind of sad that bird had a life. He was just sitting there kind of enjoying this nice sunny day, and out of nowhere, this steel ball that he knows nothing of hits him in the head and takes him out. That's sad. Why don't we invite Jesus to come sit here with us and see what he says about this moment? And I imagine that one of us would have said, Jesus says that he's sad too. He made that bird. Tells us, the hairs on your head. I know every sparrow that falls. You knew this one, Jesus would have actually, in the Bible where it said that I know every sparrow that falls, and I've also counted every hair on your head. What a wonderful opportunity for Jesus to sit there with us and remind us, I told you I know every sparrow that falls, and I knew that one too. Maybe he could have told us his name, I don't know. But to sit there with Jesus in that moment and Jesus say, yeah, I'm sad too. I'm really sad about that too. And to understand that sadness is an emotion sadness is really sweet. It's a sweet emotion. It doesn't have to go to anger. Neurologists that if we'll spend 90 seconds, Goose, 90 seconds with an emotion, it'll pass.
Wow.
But as men, we don't do that. We press it down. It becomes this pile of stuff
I
that's
think
going to come out some other kind of way.
A lot of dads, when their kid, especially their son, I don't see this quite as much with a daughter, but a lot of dads, when their sons are feeling sad, the dad has no idea how to handle that because he doesn't know how to handle sadness himself. And he just kind of pushes it away, tries to distract the kid. If you like just give them a lollipop, it'll make them happy again or something. And we don't know how to handle that. And you're training your son to not know how to handle it either. And I like what you're saying about just sit in it for a minute and talk about how are you feeling right now? Tell me why you're sad. Man, what a difference we could make if we're able to discuss feelings as dads.
In just 90 seconds, you just say, wow, I'm feeling sad right now. And you're drawing attention to that sadness rather than trying to distract yourself with a video game or a beer or a TV show or whatever it is you do to distract yourself. When my son was turning back and getting back inside the house, instead of just sitting that sadness and let that emotion pass. Because for my whole life, what I did is I pushed all those emotions down, and they're going to come out somehow.
They're sure will.
The cranky guy who's driving to church. So somehow the grumpy man, those emotions, they're in there, but we haven't learned to just sit with them. You know, the movie, I haven't seen the second one yet, but Inside Out. Shows it in the best way. I watched that movie in an airport in DC on my phone and sat there and just bawled my eyes out. I was so embarrassed. But sweetness is like that. I mean, sadness is like that character, and it's just a sweet character. And you spend some time with that sadness, and it passes. And I wish I had done that with myself. But here's the wrap up to what I would have done. Sitting there with my son, with Jesus, talking to Jesus about how sad it was, hearing from Jesus about how he was sad about it too, and spending that time. You know what my son would have learned rather than see something sad, go distract yourself? It would have been, I see something sad, I want to invite Jesus into this space.
Right.
And see how Jesus feels about it. And I'm so, like I said, I've apologized to him just so many times because, my gosh, what opportunity I had there for a lesson to teach my son for the rest of your life. Whenever you're encountering a difficult emotion, ask Jesus to sit there with you and see what he thinks about it. My gosh.
What a great lesson.
That's a huge win.
Yeah.
So whether, he doesn't have to kill a sparrow in your front yard. He loses his basketball game, or somebody at school makes fun of him, or he doesn't get the present that he thought he was going to get for his birthday, or whatever it is, or grandma dies, whatever it is. Instead of distracting them and teaching them what I was taught. And so I worked out all my emotions through workaholism, perfection. Fortunately, I didn't go to alcohol or those kind of things, but I went to workaholism and perfectionism and all those things. That's what I'll just go out and do things really well. It served me to some extent because I got good at stuff, but I taught myself not to sit with emotions, to go distract myself by doing something good. Because that may be sad, but you know what? I'm killing it over here. You made reference earlier, we can be doing stuff. Sometimes work is really inviting to us because it's easier for us to be successful there.
Absolutely. We know how to win at work.
Yeah. So you come home and it's a little bit emotional in this world that we're not used to. Mm-hmm. Somebody's asking you to spend some time with them and engage with them emotionally. I'd rather go back and swing the hammer because I'm a really good framer. I can do that. I can manage that. And I get a lot of people who want to hire me because I'm so good at what it is that I want to. I'm a best framer there is. I'm a trim carpenter. I can kill anybody, whatever it is that you do. Typically, we're drawn to that because that's where we get our satisfaction. But to say, and this is the reminder again, it's not to shame you. You've got this ability. It's in you. If it was in me, my gosh, the most dead of all men emotionally, if it was in me, it's in you. It's in every man who's listening. The opportunity, and I call it X-ray vision, the opportunity to see into the emotional life of somebody else. And instead of saying to your son, get over it, everybody loses in basketball, say, wow, what does that feel like? How does that feel? Tell me more. One of the most powerful things you can say to your wife is tell those 3 words, tell me more. That allows them to spend more time in that space, and you will help them more than say, get over it. Or why don't we go? I'll tell you what, let's go get some ice cream. How many overweight people do we have? Because instead of sitting with that emotion and telling me more, they're headed to the freezer.
Yeah, they're trying to mask it and self-medicate it away, right?
Yeah. And so if emotions are weaknesses, which they are for a lot of men because we are shamed about our emotions, change that. You've got that superpower in you. And maybe I'm going to send you a text after this to ask you if you'll be one of my check-in buddies. And I would like to check in with you.
Yeah, you got it.
And you don't have to do it every day because you don't want to shame yourself. It's not a checkbox kind of thing. It's what the rule we use is every day as much as you're able to. So there's some days I don't. Some days I can't. Some days I'll send a guy Marco Polo and it'll be 2 or 3 days before I hear from him. So I'm not continuing to pile those things on top of him. I'm waiting to him. So sometimes he's busy or whatever. So to take that time out of our day to say, I'm going to check in myself emotionally and then get in the habit of talking about it and then doing that with your wife or your family. What a powerful thing you did. What a beautiful thing that you modeled. Say, I'm grumpy. Just by you doing that, by drawing attention to taking the time, that's causing that emotion to somewhat dissipate.
Right.
The heart, this is a crazy thing. I told you about neurology, about the 90 seconds for an emotion to pass. This other thing, the heart is sending more messages to the brain than the brain is sending to the heart. And you would think my brain is in control. My brain's talking to everybody, in the system. But the heart is communicating more with the brain than the brain is communicating with the heart. And I think that speaks to our emotional lives. There's really much more going on there potentially than is going on in our thinking world. And so if we can get in the habit of checking in with ourselves and then expressing that emotion, letting it kind of wash our brain by saying, this emotion that I'm feeling in my heart, I'm going to process through my brain, which needs to convert it to words. And that process of connecting our heart and brain in a better way, I think it makes us men who can not only be more present, the first superpower, he shows up, but also has his X-ray vision, the second superpower that says, I can see it in the emotional life of somebody else because I understand my own emotional life.
That's good.
That question for men, what are you really feeling right now? When we want to go hide somewhere, if you knew what I was feeling, you may not value me as much, respect me as much, appreciate me as much. But if we can get in the habit of being more at ease with our emotions and even to connect them to physical sensations, now I know what that knot in my stomach is saying, or what the tension in my shoulders or the tension in my brow is saying to me. Maybe this is easy for you, Dave. I don't know. Maybe you do this all the time. Maybe that your listeners, maybe they do this all the time. And they're like, of course, Mark, everybody does this.
Oh, yeah.
But I, just speaking for me, I had to learn that emotions have a physical manifestation in my body. And I will tell you, the body keeps the score.
Absolutely.
So you may be able to, I mean, you're a veteran, so you understand these guys dealing with things. The body keeps the score. PTSD comes a lot. Every cell had the experience of that trauma.
Yeah.
Another reason I was late today is we had 2 trees fall on our house. And so we were through the hurricane. So we're outside of our house. But I can tell you, we were at home when that happened. It took about a third of our house out. We went to a hotel that night. And if you've been, in hotels, because the rooms are stacked on top of each other, the bathrooms are stacked on each other. When somebody would flush upstairs, it would go past our bathroom, and you would hear that go through his flush. Sounds a lot like a tree falling through the house. And I can tell you that my wife and I both the next day, I was like, man, I woke up in the middle of the night, just adrenaline dump when the toilet flushed upstairs. And I realized, because I was a mental health counselor, marriage and family therapist, so I have some background, and I realized that trauma, that was traumatic for me, the tree falling through the house. I could tell you, we lived, we did great, whatever. But I can tell you my body keeps the score.
Yeah.
And that sound, so similar to the sound of a tree falling through my house, triggered that emotional reaction from me. And it somewhat has been dissipated because I'm paying attention to it. I'm aware of it.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about it.
Yeah. And talking about it. So this experience of taking the emotional things which are down there in our bodies, physical sensations, converting the things that we're comfortable talking about, and doing it, starting at Abandoned Brothers, doing it with your wife, people who will be okay with you. We just got back from a cruise, and I saw the most beautiful thing. I saw a man about my age, maybe a little bit older. He and his wife were sitting on some chaise lounges on the deck. And I saw him. I thought, man, that looks like a successful man. We make these judgments about people.
Right.
His hair was really neatly cut and combed and everything. And I thought, this guy's probably like a banker, an attorney, one of these guys, just like that. And his wife was very, she's reading her book, and they're just sitting in these chairs next to each other. This man started to sit up, and he caught my attention because he was moving. And he went over and he laid down and he put his head on his wife's chest. And he just rested there. And her hand came as she's reading her book. She just started stroking his hair. And I thought, that's something I would be comfortable doing if my wife did that to me. Maybe you do this all the time. I don't know. Maybe it's another thing. I thought, how beautiful that man is so vulnerable that says, I really need to be taken care of by you right now. And am I just talking crazy? Is that? No,
I think that there's definitely something to this, right? He was not afraid to, maybe look like he needs her. when you need anything, you become vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah, really expressing that need where he just needed right then to put. I understand that my wife sometimes will just want to be held. I don't know that I've ever recognized that's a legitimate thing that I may need sometimes too. I thought, that's so beautiful to see that. I wish I had that type of vulnerability that man had to say, I just need. And it wasn't like, we're on a cruise, for gosh sakes, in the Caribbean. It's not like he's having a tough day, The line was long at the buffet or something, but seriously, what could be going wrong? But he was just wanting that. And I just thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah. Men who don't express their emotions. My mental image is a water heater without a pressure release valve.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're going to explode at some point. So we have to be able to talk about what we're feeling, make ourselves vulnerable, express those emotions like you're talking about, sadness and whatnot, in order to prevent an explosion down the line.
Yeah.
All right. I want to ask you this last question. What is one of the most common that you've seen? What's one of the most common, easiest ways for a dad to totally fail? Like when I was flying in the Air Force, it's always good to know where is the most likely point on this flight to crash, right? Where's the high terrain? And now I can avoid that. What's the high terrain that can take a dad out easily?
Choosing the wrong source of esteem. So where is your value coming from? And because that's where you'll place your energy. And my value for so many years was what it was that I was capable of doing. And so failure was this very scary thing for me. So my value wasn't how successful I was, how much I was capable, not money necessarily, but I've always prided myself on the guy who can get the thing done. I remember landing in Paris, was running an event in Paris, and I got off the plane. They met me at the foot of the plane. They said, "We've heard that you don't believe in the word impossible." I think I wrote about it in the book. You read it. "We've heard that you don't believe in the word impossible." And I prided myself on that. And I would be in countries where they said, "Well, we're not able to do that." I'm like, "Here, hold my Bible. We're going to get this done." So I prided myself on the ability to get things done. And that's where my value came from, my self-value. What I didn't realize is that's not at all what other people cared about in me. They appreciated that. And they loved the fact that I would help them get things done. But my real value was none of that at all. And my real value comes down to that before Jesus did his first thing, he had done nothing. He'd done no miracles. He'd done nothing. Before he did that, that voice came from heaven and said, "This is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased." That's where our value comes from.
Yeah.
Who it is that we are in his sight. So if we misplace that value and put it in our ability to do things, our ability to throw a ball really far, our ability to have a lot of friends, or wherever, our ability to please a particular person, if all of our value to make everybody happy, if to serve as many people as we can, if our value comes from places like that, we're very likely going to fail and miss it. We have to go back to where does our value really come from? And it's something that we have very little control over. It comes from our Creator, who says that this is mine. And I'm so pleased with you because I created you. And that's where your value comes from. So I think that's a misplaced value. I've never been asked that question, but that's a good answer.
Man, I love it. I think that a man who draws his identity and his source of masculinity from a deep internal well is an unstoppable man. He's a dangerous man because he's not beholden to anyone else. He's not seeking validation from any external sources. He knows who he is. He's as a child of God.
Yeah.
And that's his source. That's his wellspring is inside. And we see men all the time looking for their validation from external sources, work, money, power, women, sex, house, car, whatever. All of those things, if you seek your validation from them, you're giving them power over you.
It's beautiful.
Man, I love it.
I know we're closing. I'm looking for a book that I want. It's this new book, which I hadn't written, which I'm going to have a copy for you when you come here.
Okay.
Actually, I've got two books that I think I've written since why we're sitting here. One is this book. It's Trail Ready. It's 101 Devotions for Dads with Boys.
Oh, nice.
It's specifically written for dads with boys. So you don't do the devotional with your son. It's written for them. But what you're saying, I talk about some in here, so that's why it triggered me. So I thought I had one right here. This is a really, really cool book. But what's cool about it is every devotional has a day hike on the opposing page.
Oh, very cool.
These are day hikes with descriptions. There's two from every state. This is a cool story. The one from Hawaii had a dad send me a picture of him with his son in the place where the picture was taken, holding the book and holding up the page of Hawaii. He's like, "We're right here."
That's cool.
Yeah. So he went out and said, I'm going to do that day hike with my son. So it's called 101 Trail Ready, 101 Devotions. And we're releasing in time for Father's Day the next one, which was 102 devotions. So your folks may be interested in that, and it has some of the stuff. It's written for dads who have boys, and so it talks to you about specific things you need to be aware of with your son.
And where can men go to get that, to read more about?
Both of those books you talk about either at traillifeusa.com in the
Okay.
store there or on Amazon.
Okay.
Either way. And then I've also written this. So this is fiction called Fly to the Falcon. It's an adventure book for like 10 to 14-year-old boys.
Nice.
This is first in series. This is book one. We're writing book two right now. Brian Davis, who's a best-selling young adult writer, writes really well. He and I wrote this book together. It's called Fly to the Falcon. And
Man,
so if you got boys who like to read, you want to pick that book up.
you are crushing it, man. You are cranking it out down there.
I have an amazing team here that helps me stay focused on what's important.
Yeah, you do. I was impressed with your whole team when I was there and got to sit on one of your staff meetings. And I think that's a huge attribute that should be discussed more. Is men who are going to go far don't do it alone.
That's true.
You've got to build that team around yourself, that tribe, that band of brothers, in order to accomplish what you've done. And all your books, they have another name on them as well, right? Mm-hmm. It's you and somebody, and I think that's an important part of being successful, is not being isolated.
Yeah, or not being so egotistical that you can't share the credit.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Mark, so much for your time. Tons of great stuff we covered today, and look forward to seeing you in the new year. But happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas to you.
Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I love what you're doing, the work that you're making a difference. That's a big deal, and I think you have an amazing tribe formed around you, and just keep it up. If there's anything we can do to help, we're here. And so just appreciate the work you're doing. You're making a difference.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. To find out more about what we're doing and to join us on our mission, go to men'salliancetribe.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a 5-star review.